And now it's Sunday. This is what we have heard. Early this morning, before dawn, some women, also followers of Jesus, went to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body in preparation for burial. When they got to the tomb, they saw angels, and one of the women claimed that Jesus appeared to her. But when we heard this, we took it with a pinch of salt, guessing that it probably was the gardener. The irony of the situation struck us. Living things grow in a garden, but here, amidst the plants and grass, the body of a dead man had been placed in a tomb. Anyway, the women came to tell us what they had experienced at the tomb. Peter ran there and discovered that the tomb was empty. The burial cloths were still there, folded neatly and in a pile, but the body of Jesus had disappeared. What on earth had happened to his body? Peter was mystified. And so were the rest of us. We had absolutely no clue. We wondered if the body had been stolen by someone, maybe the authorities who would produce it when there were claims about Jesus having appeared again. Anyway, we left some of the disciples trying to make sense of what had happened, and two of us headed for home. And home was about 7 miles away in a little village called Emmaus. And it takes a couple of hours to get there. We are in no hurry because we have nothing in particular to do when we get home. We are lost in our thoughts and also engaged in conversation from time to time as we mull over and speak about the events of the last week, and particularly the shocking events of last night and today. And of course, yesterday and this morning. And we're trying to understand what could have happened to the body of Jesus. This too is really distressing. He deserves to rest in peace now without this kind of interference. And whilst we're walking along, talking to each other, really gloomy, disconsolate, depressed, miserable, a stranger walks up to us. "What are the two of you talking about?" he asks. We reply, "Haven't you heard about what's been happening over the last few days in Jerusalem?" "What exactly?" he asks. So we tell him about Jesus, a prophet with miraculous powers, and the one we thought that was going to rescue Israel, save Israel from Roman oppression and restore to Israel former glory. And we tell him too about the fact that this Jesus was arrested because of religious and political leaders conspiring together to get rid of him because it was uncomfortable to have him around, and they wanted to silence him. Also because Jesus was showing up the religious leaders as being completely lacking in authority and integrity. Anyway, we tell the stranger, who doesn't seem to have heard anything about what's been going on, we tell him everything. We tell him about the horrible crucifixion. And we say we had hoped that he would free us from Roman oppression and lead Israel into a new future. We carry on walking, and we continue to tell this uninformed stranger about today's distressing news. This morning, 3 days after Jesus died, some women, also followers of Jesus, went to the tomb. And they claimed that they'd seen angels there, and those angels told the women that Jesus was alive. And we make it clear as we're talking with the stranger that we're not really impressed by the women's story and their interpretation of events. And the stranger interrupts. How come you don't understand? This is precisely what the prophets said was going to happen. They said that the Messiah would suffer and die before entering his glory. And so the stranger, whom we thought did not know anything about the events of the last week and probably had no understanding of the scriptures and the talk about the Messiah and so on, this stranger then begins to explain things to us from the scriptures, beginning with Moses. And we're enthralled because we haven't heard it being explained so clearly. And it's wonderful. Our ears are tingling and our hearts are burning as he unpacks some of those scriptures that we'd never really understood. And it was so strange how we thought this stranger knew nothing. And it turns out that he knows much more than either of us knows. And anyway, he tells us about all that God has done in Israel's history, leading up to what has just happened in Jerusalem. It's a familiar pattern. God sends someone, apparently a messenger for his people, and the messenger is rejected and often treated with ferocious hostility. And so he tells us that this is how many of the prophets were treated. And sometimes he says the messenger is even killed because the people are so angry, and the religious leaders in particular are furious that someone is speaking out the truth, and their errors are being exposed. But God doesn't give up, so the stranger continues. God is so concerned to help his people understand that his kingdom means the reign of truth, justice, peace, and love. So God perseveres and sends one messenger after another. When God's messengers come, they never use power, military power. They never use violence. They never use force. They always seem to be kind of on the outskirts of society, just enough to be able to speak into a situation. And the prophets always are kind of ordinary people, but they are vulnerable, and they have this burning passion to convince people of the truth about God's kingdom. Well, as I say, it really is enthralling to hear this stranger interpreting all the stuff in the scriptures and just shining a light on the whole situation. We have a new understanding, and it is, well, if it wasn't such a depressing time, if Jesus wasn't dead and his body missing, it would be absolutely incredible to continue to learn all the stuff from this man who knows so much. And we carry on, and finally we arrive in Emmaus, and quite disappointed that our conversation is coming to an end. We would so love to hear more. It's amazing. Everything is falling into place, and for the first time, the prophecies that we've heard so often begin to make sense. The stranger looks as though he's going to continue his journey wherever he's going, and we're of course staying in Emmaus, and so we beg him to stay for the night. It's getting quite late, and at least stay and have a meal with us. So he agrees, and he sits down with us at the table, And he takes the bread that is on the table and he gives thanks. And then he breaks the bread and gives us each a piece. And in that moment, our eyes are opened. This is Jesus. How come we are only realizing this now? And just as we are filled with incredible excitement and joy, suddenly he's gone. Just like that. And we're super excited. We're over the moon. We're incredulous. We're wondering how on earth this could have happened. And we're unable to contain our feelings. The talk about Moses and the prophets, the explanations, our hearts burning, and our understanding of the scriptures much more than ever before. Was this whole encounter real, or did we dream it? But he was with us, physically with us. He took the bread and he gave thanks for the bread, and he broke the bread and he gave it to us. We know that he was present with us at this table in this room. We know that he walked with us, and we couldn't have imagined this whole thing, because now we understand so much more. It must have happened. And so we say to each other, let's go back to Jerusalem. Now, you can understand, 7 miles to get to Emmaus, and we're quite tired, and it's getting late in the day. But we realize we've just got to get back to the other disciples, and we've got to tell them about this experience we've had. And in any case, we are so super excited that we'll never sleep tonight. We might as well just go back to Jerusalem. And so with our heads spinning and our hearts pounding, we begin the journey back. What a revelation. Another night when we won't get much sleep. But who cares? This is the best thing that has ever happened. This is the best day of our lives. So we rush back to Jerusalem. And whereas we'd taken a fairly easy walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus, this time we're keen to get back as quickly as possible, not only because it's getting dark, but also because we want to share the incredible experience that we've had. If it is true that Jesus is risen from the dead, then it means everything has changed. Death has been overcome. We don't need to be afraid of death anymore, because if Jesus has been raised from the dead, then we will rise too. We don't have to be afraid of our political and religious leaders. There, in fact, is nothing that we need to fear. And the wonderful thing is, of course, if Jesus is alive again, it means we can continue as before, and we can resume the work we were doing with him, that he was teaching us. And that is just so exciting. So that whole phase of our lives hasn't ended. In fact, now there might be a whole lot more impetus and excitement, because Jesus was taken away from us very briefly, but he's back. He'll be back with us. We can do so much more. And so we feel that we have a new lease on life. We remember Thursday evening, the breaking of bread and the cup of wine. We can understand the symbolism of body and blood. Maybe this will become really important, especially after Jesus has gone, perhaps for good. He did suggest that this would be an appropriate way of remembering him, the breaking of the bread and giving thanks and consuming it and drinking wine. If we all eat from one loaf and drink from one cup, it's kind of emphasizing the fact that we belong together and that we're taking the life of Jesus into each of us. And that means we're really connected. And that's an amazing thought. We all scatter and we go into our different homes, but having consumed a piece of bread from one loaf, or having drunk from one cup, we are all united together. We belong together. We belong together with each other and together with Jesus. Well, it's really dark when we enter Jerusalem. What a roller coaster the last week has been. Last Sunday, we had no idea what was going to unfold. In 1 week, everything has changed. Resurrection, new life, new possibilities. We're excited about meeting up with the others again. We're feeling a strange new longing to get busy doing the stuff that Jesus had been doing and for which he trained us. The Lord is risen. Jesus, the Messiah, is back from the grave. Let's tell the world. We are so filled with love and laughter that we can't wait to get started. And we feel this love for the other disciples that we've never kind of felt before. We feel as though we're not bothered anymore about trying to prove that we're better than everybody else. And we feel as though finally the light has come on and we're so keen to be back in fellowship and to be back doing this wonderful work. Lord, you really are a God of surprises. We might have known you had something up your sleeve. Our ancestors were delivered out of slavery in Egypt. Our people, exiled to Babylon, were brought safely home. And now, best of all, you have delivered us from the powers of darkness, delivered us from our own frailty and from death itself. Hallelujah! The Lord is risen. Praise to God Most High. Hallelujah.